chances are you have a narcissist in your life. They can be your friend, your boss, or even a family member. The worst part? You might not even realize it. Narcissists are master manipulators who blend in so well that by the time you notice their true nature, you're already trapped in their web. They charm, they deceive, and they leave destruction in their wake. But once you know the signs, you'll never unsee them. Here are ways to spot a narcissist before they manipulate you. They can be your friend, your boss, or even a family member. The problem? They're masters of disguise. But once you know the signs, you'll never unsee them. Here are ways to spot a narcissist before they manipulate you. By the way, if you enjoy deep, thought-provoking insights on stoicism, self-improvement, and navigating life with wisdom, you'll love my free newsletter. Every Sunday, I share powerful lessons, controversial truths, and practical strategies to help you level up, all for free. Want to join? Sign up using the link below and start receiving value-packed content straight to your inbox every week. And if you're a brand looking to sponsor my content and reach a highly engaged audience, feel free to reach out via my email in the description. Let's create something impactful together. 1. They make everything about themselves. Ever had a conversation where you share something important and they instantly hijack it to talk about themselves? Classic narcissist move. You could be talking about your struggles, your success, or even your pain, and somehow they twist the conversation to make it about them. I once opened up to someone about a serious challenge I was facing, something that had been weighing on me for months. Instead of acknowledging my feelings, they cut me off mid-sentence and started talking about how they had been through worse and how people just need to toughen up. No empathy, no validation, just a competition to see who had suffered more. The conversation wasn't about finding comfort or understanding. It was about them keeping the upper hand. This isn't just an annoying habit. It's a red flag. Narcissists don't engage in conversations to connect. They engage to dominate. They see relationships as arenas where they must be the center of attention, the one whose experiences matter the most. And if you dare challenge their self-importance, they'll gaslight you into thinking you're selfish for wanting to be heard. You could be opening up about a personal struggle, finally getting vulnerable, and instead of listening, they one-up you. I once shared a deeply personal experience about losing someone close to me. I was raw, open, and looking for a genuine connection. The person I confided in, they immediately launched into a story about how they once lost a pet and how it was just as devastating. No moment of silence, no acknowledgement of my feelings, just a blatant redirection to their own life. And here's the thing, this isn't just selfishness, it's control. A narcissist's greatest fear is being overshadowed, so they'll do whatever it takes to keep the spotlight on themselves. If you don't play along, they'll guilt-trip you, act like you're boring, or make you feel like your emotions are invalid. Over time, you start questioning yourself. Am I too sensitive? Am I making a big deal out of nothing? But here's the truth. Your emotions are real, and anyone who constantly makes you feel otherwise is not worth your energy. Watch out for those who turn every conversation into their personal stage. They don't want connection. They want an audience. They have an insatiable hunger for validation, and your pain or success is just another opportunity for them to feed their ego. And if you ever try to redirect the conversation back to what actually matters, they'll either dismiss you entirely or act like they're the victim. Suddenly, you're the bad guy for not letting them vent about their struggles. Over time, this dynamic drains you. You become the emotional dumping ground, the cheerleader, the therapist, but never the main character in your own life. This is how narcissists keep people trapped. They make you feel like your role is to serve their emotional needs, while your own needs become secondary. The worst part? The longer you stay around these people, the more you start internalizing their behavior. You might begin suppressing your own feelings, avoiding deep conversations, or even believing that your problems aren't as significant as theirs. That's how deep the manipulation runs. So, how do you deal with them? Call them out? Try to make them see the pattern? No, because a narcissist will never admit they're wrong. The best solution? Distance. Stop feeding their need for attention. Set firm boundaries and refuse to let them hijack your emotions. The moment they realize they can't use you for their emotional theatrics, they'll either lash out or quietly move on to their next target. Remember this: conversations should be about connection, not control. If someone constantly shifts the focus back to themselves, making you feel unheard and unseen, it's not just a personality quirk, it's a sign that you're dealing with someone who doesn't genuinely care about you, and you deserve better. 2. They exploit others for their own gain. Narcissists don't see people as individuals with feelings, dreams, or struggles. They see them as tools, resources to be used, manipulated, and discarded once they're no longer useful, whether it's emotionally, financially, socially, or even professionally. A narcissist will extract every ounce of value from someone and then move on without guilt or remorse. Ever noticed someone who only reaches out when they need something? They act friendly, seem interested in your life, and make you feel like they care, until you realize it's all transactional. Once you stop providing what they need, they vanish. No check-ins, no genuine care, just radio silence. And when they do come back, it's not to see how you're doing, it's because they need something again. I once had a so-called friend who would constantly praise me when they needed help. They'd say things like, "You're so good at this. I don't know what I'd do without you." Or, "You're such a great person. I really admire you." But the moment I wasn't available or said no, the charm disappeared. Suddenly, I was selfish, or not as reliable as they thought. It wasn't friendship. It was a business transaction, disguised as connection. This isn't just about borrowing money or favors. Narcissists exploit emotions too. They guilt-trip you into doing things for them, weaponize their own struggles to make you feel obligated, and use manipulation tactics to ensure they always get their way. They'll pretend to be vulnerable, exaggerate their hardships, or even fake kindness just long enough to gain your trust, only to turn around and use that trust against you. And when they no longer need you, you become irrelevant. They ghost you, replace you, or even worse, suddenly turn hostile as if you were the problem all along. The truth is, narcissists don't form real relationships. They form contracts, unspoken agreements, where you give and they take. The biggest red flag: they never give back unless it benefits them. A narcissist will only show kindness when there's something in it for them. They don't do favors out of goodwill. They do them to hold power over you. If you ever call them out on this, they'll gaslight you, act like you're being ungrateful, or even try to guilt-trip you into believing you're the selfish one. Some narcissists take this to extreme levels. They may string you along in a relationship, making you believe that love and loyalty will eventually be reciprocated, when in reality, they're just keeping you around for convenience. They will drain your emotional energy, using your kindness as fuel for their ego, while giving you breadcrumbs in return. If they sense that you are pulling away, they will suddenly shower you with affection, promising to change. only to revert back to their manipulative ways once they feel secure again. It's especially dangerous in professional settings. A narcissistic boss or colleague will exploit your hard work, take credit for your ideas, and subtly manipulate you into overworking yourself while they reap the rewards. They'll act like your mentor, praising you just enough to keep you working harder, but never enough to actually let you rise above them. The moment they feel threatened by your competence, they'll sabotage you without hesitation. Even within families, narcissistic parents exploit their children, using them as emotional crutches, manipulating them into fulfilling their unmet needs, or controlling them well into adulthood. They will guilt-trip their kids into obedience, using phrases like, "After everything I've done for you," to justify their unreasonable demands. The child grows up feeling indebted and never good enough, forever stuck in the cycle of trying to please someone who only sees them as an extension of their own ego. So, how do you protect yourself? Set boundaries. Recognize when someone is only around for what they can gain. If someone disappears the moment you stop being useful to them, let them go. You deserve relationships based on mutual respect, not exploitation. Learn to say no without guilt. If someone only values you when you're giving them something, they don't truly care about you. Protect your energy, and remember, real relationships are built on mutual give and take, not one-sided sacrifice. The sooner you identify these people, the sooner you can remove their toxic influence from your life. 3. They play the victim. Even when they're in the wrong, they'll twist the story so they seem like the one who was wronged. This is one of the most insidious traits of a narcissist, because it allows them to avoid accountability while gaining sympathy and support from others. They masterfully manipulate narratives to make themselves appear as innocent victims of circumstance, deceitful people, or an unfair world. Think about the times you've confronted someone about their toxic behavior, only for them to turn it around on you. Instead of acknowledging their actions, they cry, sulk, or lash out about how much pressure they're under, how no one appreciates them, or how they're just trying their best. Suddenly, you find yourself comforting the person who hurt you, and your valid concerns get completely erased from the conversation. A narcissist's ability to play the victim is a strategic move. If they can convince people they've been wronged, they can continue their toxic behavior without consequence. They will exaggerate, fabricate, or selectively recall events to ensure they always come out looking like the hero or the tragic figure. You'll often hear them say things like, "I was just trying to help, but everyone turned against me. I guess I'm just the bad guy no matter what I do. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." They use guilt as a weapon. If you stand up for yourself, they'll make you feel like the villain. If you call them out, they'll accuse you of being cruel or insensitive. Over time, this behavior conditions people to walk on eggshells around them, afraid of upsetting the poor victim who always seems to be suffering. One of the most frustrating aspects of this trait is how effective it is in fooling outsiders. People who don't see the full picture may fall for the narcissist's sob stories, offering them validation and sympathy while demonizing the real victim. This can leave you feeling isolated, doubting your own perception of events, and even questioning if you're the one in the wrong. In relationships, narcissists will use the victim card to justify their manipulative actions. They might say they had a difficult childhood, or that they've been betrayed in the past, implying that their toxic behavior is somehow justified. While past trauma can explain someone's behavior, it never excuses hurting others. But a narcissist doesn't care about growth or self-reflection. They just want a free pass to continue their manipulation. At work, they might act like they're constantly overworked, underappreciated, or sabotaged by co-workers. In reality, they may be the ones causing the chaos, spreading rumors, taking credit for others' work, or refusing to take responsibility for their mistakes. But because they frame themselves as the poor, misunderstood underdog, they often avoid blame and even gain favoritism from bosses or colleagues who buy into their act. With family and friends, they'll use emotional manipulation to keep control. If you set boundaries or distance yourself, they'll act heartbroken, telling everyone that you abandoned them or that you're being so cold and unfair. Meanwhile, they conveniently forget all the ways they disrespected you, drained you, and made you feel like you were never enough. The key to dealing with a narcissist who plays the victim is to recognize the pattern and refuse to participate. Don't get drawn into their guilt trips or emotional blackmail. When they start twisting reality, stick to the facts. When they seek sympathy, remind yourself that their problems are often self-inflicted. Most importantly, don't let their narrative make you doubt yourself. A narcissist's greatest trick is convincing the world they're the victim while leaving a trail of real victims in their wake. 4. They're obsessed with status. Narcissists care deeply about appearances, whether it's wealth, power, or social standing. They thrive on external validation and believe that their worth is directly tied to what they can show others. Their obsession with status goes beyond mere desire. It becomes a driving force that shapes almost every decision they make. I once worked with someone who was obsessed with climbing the social ladder. They were always quick to remind everyone about their connections with powerful people, whether it was mentioning how they had lunch with the CEO or how they played golf with the mayor. It wasn't just casual conversation, it was a constant need to drop names and showcase their status. And the most frustrating part, they never cared to ask about your life unless it somehow aligned with their image. I realized that in their mind, their worth was measured by the company they kept, not by the value they brought to those relationships. This obsession isn't just about acquiring wealth or titles, it's about securing social dominance. If you were seen hanging out with someone they didn't deem worthy, suddenly you were treated like a lesser person. They'd make snide remarks or subtly question your worth based on your social circle. This wasn't just superficial, it was a strategy to control how others saw them. They needed to maintain that air of superiority, even if it meant belittling others to elevate themselves. A deeper personal experience comes from dealing with someone who prided themselves on their luxury lifestyle. They flaunted their expensive tastes, whether it was their designer clothes or vacations in exotic places, but it was always with a sense of superiority. When I once shared a story about a simple vacation I took, they immediately downplayed it, saying something like, "That sounds nice, but it's nothing compared to the places I go." They weren't just sharing their experiences, they were setting a standard to measure mine against, showing that I, in their eyes, wasn't living up to the kind of lifestyle they thought mattered. But here's the darker side of this obsession: the manipulation. Narcissists often surround themselves with people who help project the image they want to maintain. They'll use others to boost their status, whether it's by inserting themselves into your achievements or claiming credit for things they didn't do. I've seen it firsthand, where someone took credit for a project I worked on just to appear more important in front of higher-ups. They would name drop, highlight their supposed influence, and minimize my contribution, all to solidify their image as a person of power. It's exhausting. When you're in the presence of someone obsessed with status, you begin to feel like a pawn in their game of social chess. It's not just about you anymore. It's about how they can use your successes, your connections, and your personality to climb higher. And the moment you stop serving that purpose, you're discarded. This obsession with status isn't just a superficial flaw. It's a deep-rooted need that narcissists have to feel validated. It's how they convince themselves they matter in a world where they often feel empty inside. So while they parade their external achievements, their internal world is one of insecurity. And that's why they'll use anyone and anything to maintain their image, because without it, they fear they might just disappear. 5. They can't handle criticism. Call them out on their behavior and they'll explode, play the victim, or deflect the blame elsewhere. To a narcissist, being wrong is not an option. Their fragile ego cannot tolerate even the slightest suggestion that they might have made a mistake. If you criticize them, even constructively, you're not just giving feedback, you're attacking their self-worth. And their response? Pure, calculated defense. I once worked with someone who considered themselves a genius in their field. They had this aura of superiority, as if they were above making mistakes. One day during a project review, I pointed out a small flaw in their work, something minor that could be improved. I wasn't being rude. I was simply trying to make the project better. Their reaction? Instant rage. They didn't just disagree, they turned red, started raising their voice, and accused me of trying to undermine their authority. It wasn't about the feedback, it was about their ego being bruised. And here's the thing, narcissists don't always explode in anger. Sometimes they take the passive-aggressive route. Another time, I confronted a friend about how they constantly interrupted me in conversations. I expected a simple, "Oh, I didn't realize that, I'll be more mindful." Instead, they pulled the classic narcissistic deflection. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but I just have a lot of important things to say. Maybe you should learn to be more confident so you can keep up." They didn't take accountability. They flipped it on me, made it seem like the issue wasn't their rudeness, but my supposed lack of confidence. Some narcissists, when confronted, will play the victim. They'll make you feel like the bad guy for even daring to point out their flaws. I remember calling out someone who always made condescending jokes at my expense. When I finally said, "Hey, that's not funny and it's actually kind of hurtful," they immediately looked offended and responded, "Wow, I can't believe you take it that way. I was just trying to lighten the mood. Why do you always have to make everything so serious?" Suddenly I was the problem. Suddenly I was too sensitive instead of them being disrespectful. And let's not forget the expert deflectors. I once watched a narcissistic boss make a terrible decision that cost the company a lot of money. When confronted by higher-ups, did they take responsibility? Of course not. They threw their own team under the bus, blaming poor execution instead of their own flawed strategy. This is a common narcissistic tactic. If they can't deny the mistake, they'll shift the blame onto someone else. It's never their fault. Ever. So what can you do? Here's the truth. You can't change them. A narcissist doesn't see criticism as a chance to improve. They see it as an attack on their very identity. They will gaslight, deflect, attack, or manipulate to protect their fragile sense of superiority. The best thing you can do? Stop expecting accountability from them. If someone shows you, time and time again, that they can't handle even the smallest amount of criticism, you're not dealing with a mature, self-aware person. You're dealing with someone who values their ego over the truth. And that's a dangerous game to play. 6. They have a roller coaster personality. One moment, they're the most charming, loving, and supportive person you've ever met. The next, they're cold, dismissive, or outright cruel. You never really know which version of them you're going to get. And that's exactly how they want it. Narcissists thrive on instability. not their own, but yours. By keeping you off balance, they maintain control. I once had a friend who could go from being my biggest cheerleader to my worst critic in the span of a day. If I accomplished something, they would act overjoyed, showering me with compliments, making me feel like I was on top of the world. But the next day, they'd act distant, annoyed, as if my success had suddenly become an inconvenience to them. If I confronted them about the sudden shift in behavior, they'd gaslight me with something like, "You're overthinking things," or "Why are you so sensitive?" It was never them changing. It was always me imagining things. And that's the trap. You start questioning yourself instead of realizing the emotional instability is deliberate. Narcissists use this push and pull strategy to keep you emotionally invested. When they're kind, you feel relieved, like you're finally good enough for them. When they're cruel, you feel desperate to get back to the version of them that was kind. And that cycle, it never ends. A former boss of mine was another perfect example of this. One day they'd praise my work, tell me I had a bright future, and make me feel like I was invaluable to the company. The next week, they'd barely acknowledge my presence, find fault in everything I did, and act as if I was one mistake away from being fired. It wasn't about my performance, it was about power. They wanted me to feel uncertain, to crave their approval, to work harder not for the job, but for their validation. Even in relationships, this pattern is common. I knew someone who would be the most affectionate, loving partner one day, constantly texting, calling, planning dates, then disappear the next. No explanation, no reason, just emotional withdrawal. When questioned, they'd act like nothing was wrong. But then suddenly they'd be back, full of love and affection. This unpredictability kept their partner hooked, always trying to figure out what they did wrong to deserve the cold treatment. This emotional unpredictability is by design. Narcissists don't want consistency in their relationships because consistency means stability, and stability means less control over you. If you're always second-guessing where you stand with them, you'll go out of your way to please them, earn their approval, and tolerate their worst behavior just for the chance to see their good side again. And here's the worst part. If you ever get tired of the game and try to walk away, they suddenly switch back to being the most charming version of themselves. They'll apologize without actually meaning it. They'll promise to change, but never will. And they'll do just enough to make you stay. Then, once they've pulled you back in, the cycle starts all over again. How to protect yourself? The only way to win this game is to stop playing it. Recognize that their kindness is conditional, their affection is manipulation, and their mood swings are tactics, not emotions. A person who genuinely cares about you won't make you feel like you're walking on eggshells. They won't treat you like a disposable source of entertainment or validation. If someone's behavior is a constant emotional roller coaster, get off the ride. 7. They're charismatic, but shallow. At first, they seem magnetic, witty, confident, and effortlessly engaging. They tell the best stories, make you laugh, and seem to have a natural ability to command attention in any room. It's easy to get drawn in, to feel like you've met someone truly special. But over time, something starts to feel off. The deeper you try to connect, the more you realize there's nothing underneath the surface. Their personality isn't real. It's a carefully crafted performance. Narcissists aren't interested in genuine human connection. They're interested in admiration, control, and validation. And as soon as you stop feeding their ego, you'll see their charm vanish. I once knew someone who could walk into a room and have everyone's attention within minutes. They were hilarious, full of fascinating stories, and made everyone feel like they were the most important person in the world. But after a while, I started noticing patterns. Their stories never changed. They would repeat the same jokes, the same experiences, the same exaggerated tales of success, as if they were rehearsed. And when you tried to share something about yourself, they barely listened. They'd nod, say something vague, and then immediately steer the conversation back to themselves. That's the thing about narcissists. They simulate deep conversations without actually having them. They can talk for hours, but you'll realize they never reveal anything truly personal or vulnerable. If you ask about their past, they'll give vague or exaggerated responses. If you share something meaningful, they'll acknowledge it just enough to keep you engaged, but never truly connect. I once had a coworker who had everyone fooled. He was smooth, well-dressed, and could talk his way out of anything. He made people feel special, like they were part of an exclusive circle. But behind closed doors, he was ruthless. He would insult people behind their backs, take credit for others' work, and drop friends the moment they were no longer useful. His charisma was just a tool, a means to get ahead, manipulate, and stay on top. And that's exactly how narcissists operate. Their charm is a mask, designed to pull people in and keep them around until they're no longer needed. They don't build deep friendships because deep friendships require vulnerability, empathy, and reciprocity. 3 things narcissists completely lack. How to protect yourself. The biggest red flag. The relationship feels one-sided. If you find yourself constantly listening but never truly being heard, giving but never receiving, or feeling like something is off, no matter how charismatic they seem, trust that instinct. A person with real depth doesn't need to put on a performance. Genuine connection isn't flashy, but it's real. Narcissists aren't always obvious. They don't walk around with a sign that says, "I only care about myself." They're charming, persuasive, and calculated, which makes them dangerous. But once you start noticing the patterns, the selfishness, the manipulation, the inability to form deep connections, you'll never unsee them. The best way to protect yourself? Stop giving them what they crave. Don't feed their ego. Don't get caught in their games. And most importantly, don't expect them to change. They thrive on control, and the moment you take that away, they lose their grip on you. Have you ever encountered a narcissist? What was your experience? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts.